This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
What's up, Mr. Brake?
Man, it is a scorcher here up in the Seattle area. I mean, I don't know how most people do, but the rest of the country, we don't have air conditioning up here in our houses for the majority of us folks. And it is about 95 degrees. And I would say probably about 83, 84 in our house, which is about 30 degrees C for those of you who are using the metric system, Celsius. I miss Austin where, it's 75 degrees in your house year round if you want it to be. So, yeah. So
usually people set it to 68 in the summer and 80 in the winter, which I don't get.
Oh God, I don't do that.
Yeah.
Whatever. Jeez.
Yeah,
no, I can tell you what temperature is in my house by whether or not my mouse hand is cold. If it is cold, it is less than 65 degrees. You can almost set me by it. I'm a human thermometer. It's weird like that. I just have poor circulation in my hands, and if it gets cold enough, I can feel it and I can tell. So, well, enough about temperature and weather and such. We're here to talk about InfoSec, and this was so we're trying something new. The DerbyCon talk list came out, and of course I wasn't accepted because I think my talk was probably crap anyway. But I got to thinking about all those people who didn't get to do a talk at DerbyCon. Those folks, 30 or 40 people you hear about whose talks were rejected. And I was like, well, what if we could get those people to come on the podcast and talk about the talk they didn't get to give? And the first person to actually reach out to us was the guy who we're interviewing tonight. His name is Bill. We have an update to that actually due to some issues. I don't know if he managed to, put some money in Dave's pocket, but his talk has now been accepted at DerbyCon. But I know, right? He was like, hey, it's been accepted. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess it was still kind of a rejected talk. So, but I love the subject.
Right.
Yeah. So, welcome, Bill, to the show. Bill has a last name that escapes me right now because he had two different ones, and his Twitter has something else. And so, Bill, welcome to the show. Please feel free to introduce yourself and maybe a little bit about your origin, your superhero story, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. My name is Bill Vokes. I do pretty much everything IT for a small to medium business here in the Midwest, the financial sector. And I guess a little bit about me. I went to school for InfoSec, which is probably not most people's story. Maybe I suppose more and more now, but I went to a school for InfoSec, and I kind of learned how much I didn't know once I got out of school, and but I think I learned enough to learn a hell of a lot once I got it into my job, pretty much doing sysadmin stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, kind of one of the wake up calls I had though was I went to a training that Dave Kennedy did. It was like for $200, and it was kind of the same thing he did at Black Hat that year, and that really opened up my eyes and realized how much I didn't know, and that I would consider that to be kind of my awakening into the real security community, and started getting involved on Twitter and all that.
Very awesome. So you said you went to college you went to school for InfoSec. Was it like a degree completion program or?
It was a computer and network security bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Yep.
Very cool. So your talk, which was rejected but now has been accepted, was on something called, we're calling it's a PAWs terminal, but it's not like the point of sale. It's PAWs. Maybe you could explain what a PAW is. with regard to Windows environment or whatever.
Yep. So this year, Microsoft came out with a few articles, TechNet articles on this concept of privileged access workstation,
Okay.
and that's where it began. As far as I know, maybe it was an older concept than that. I'm not totally sure, but they kind of had some um, a white paper basically explaining what they are, how to deploy them in your environment, and basically what they are is managing your credentials, your like domain admin creds, member server, anything that's a privileged credential on a Windows environment and non-Windows too. Like if you had credentials you use for managing routers or any kind of privileged credentials that you want to keep safe. You deploy what started was they released a paper about how they deployed this in the Microsoft environment, where they have these PAWs that actually I think they first called them secure access workstations or SAW or something, but anyway, it was an actual dedicated physical like laptop or hardware that you would check out to do to you that you use that for only um, administrative things like managing AD or group policy or whatever the task is that your job duties entail. And then you'd have a separate machine that you would use, for email, web browsing, things like that.
So it's like a separate physical machine for your privileged accounts, right?
Yeah, so that was kind of I think that, as far as I know, that was one of the first articles they came out with. Well, then they came out with another um, article that talked about, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be two physical machines. You can you can have the host machine be the privileged access workstation, and then have a VM that you use for your productivity on that same hardware. Um, you can do it with VDI, so you'd have a privileged access workstation that's one instance VM, and then you'd have your productivity on a totally different VM, and they'd probably be on different network segments and VLANs, and so there's more than one way to do it, but part of it was that jump servers and that kind of a solution to the problem, they are kind of inherently flawed because a lot of times people would be accessing those jump servers from a machine that they also browse the web on and get their email on, and not necessarily a trusted source. So if that machine is compromised, whatever they're accessing is potentially could be compromised as well. So that's kind of the whole reason behind what a PAW is for.
Okay. And so for PAWs, here in your outline, you mentioned that that PAWs can be used to limit exposure to things like passing the hash and stealing tickets. How does that limit the exposure if you're still logging into the box? And
Right. Okay. So if you think about no, and I'm not a red team guy.
Mhm.
I have my feet barely touching the water, so this might not be 100% accurate. But if you think of a scenario where an attacker gets a user to click a link, and they say they pop that box, they get a shell on their side, and it's just and depending on the security posture of that company, that user may already be running as local admin, which make it a little bit easier. Just say they are. Well, running as local admin, they could then dump credentials with something like that of anybody that's logged in that box. So maybe there's a service account that the vendor said should be running as domain admin that hits every box every 10 minutes or whatever, and well, now they are domain admin because they just need to use, if they have an interpreter shell, you just do something like use incognito, and you migrate into that process, and now you're running as domain admin.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing on the security posture, it may be a little bit harder than that. If the user is running as a standard user, they would need to either elevate their privileges with some kind of a there's multiple ways to do that, obviously, but on a local machine, or maybe they move laterally until they find a box where there's a until they can get local admin, dump creds, and so on and so forth until they move up the chain and get to domain admin. So the whole concept of a PAW is you limit those credentials to be on machines that you're not exposing those credentials to as few places as possible, basically.
Okay, so what does a lab setup look like for a PAW terminal? I mean, you said you could use it as a VM, and funnily enough, I think Mr. Betcher thought of, I myself thought of this a couple of years ago when we worked at another company where for PCI requirements you had to have a VM that only accessed the PCI side, and another VM that only accessed the non-PCI side. And to do work, you couldn't mix, cross the beams in this case and pollute the environment. So we had two different network connections, two different VPNs that would, log into the different boxes. Is that very much similar to how a PAW would work in this case?
Yeah, I mean, you want to keep them as separate as possible. So if you do, for like a small business like us, the only really way that made a whole lot of sense for us was you have a that is the laptop is the host, and that is really your privileged access workstation. And on that you have a VM. So you can use Hyper-V or whatever. That would be probably the most ideal, is use Hyper-V, and that VM is your productivity machine. And with that, you can also put the host on different network segment, different VLAN than your VM. But you don't want to have it the other way around, where you have your productivity machine is your host, and your VM is your privileged workstation, because it's the same kind of concept as jump server, where you're not coming from we're not coming from a trusted source or a clean source. That makes sense.
Yeah. So you mentioned deployment models on this. How are there different deployment types or different deployment models on how you want to do this? Is there ways to be, more secure? I mean, if a red team guy could pop a shell on your local box, wouldn't they have access to your PAW your PAW systems? And how would you limit access to your PAW system through VM? Would you have a direct access through like Hyper-V, or would you use like RDP or VNC or something like that?
Well, on the PAW itself, if somebody popped the VM on the PAW, I don't know that they have some kind of a way to get through to the Hyper-V, OS, which would probably be possible, but it would have to be some kind of a exploit, I would think, to go from the guest to the host, which I'm sure that's possible. But where the one thing though on the host, you have a lot of, it's locked down pretty tight. So like you have different group policies, and in that TechNet article, they got to go through all the different group policies. Like, you're not actually running as an admin on the PAW itself, and you can't browse the web on it. You you may have to do that. So you may have to do like a pack file or something to allow only certain sites out. if you're like a
So
cloud
if you're
admin, that.
if your privileged access workstation, your PAW is on a VM, then you're surfing the web on your physical machine, right? If that physical machine gets compromised, then your VM is also compromised, right?
Right, right. And that's why that is not a model that you'd want to take. It's kind of the same thing as a jump server, where wherever you're accessing it from, if that's compromised, if there's a keylogger on that, whatever you're doing is potentially compromised too. Whereas if the host is locked down tight, you lock it down as tight as you can so that you try to not let that ever get compromised. And so it's
So
kind of
you
like a
can
clean source.
do Google, Googling and all that research on the VM. Then you're saying your VM
Yes.
is your standard machine, and
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So the VM is the only thing that can get out to the
Yep.
internet, and the physical machine can only go to your your company's environment, your data.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So, and part of this, it comes down to, you got to have some prerequisites before you can just roll this out. You got to, for one thing, you got to be breaking out standard users, local admins, member server admins, domain admins. You got to have all those different levels, and also network segmentation. So you've got user networks, admin networks, and then you put the PAW into the admin network, and the user productivity machine in the user network.
Well, wouldn't requiring a VPN kind of do the same thing, right? In order to access the trusted environment, you had to VPN into it.
But if you're doing that from the same machine that you are browsing the web and opening email from,
Yeah.
I guess it depends on how you authenticate to the VPN. But if your host gets compromised, anything you do from there could also be compromised.
So
Right.
you on one of your bullets here, you were talking about you were mentioning the lockdown and separation of users. That would also require you to have separate GPOs for each user. I would imagine, right? How are you deploying? How are you getting the GPOs to the host for various? If I'm an admin and I need to do something, I need to push an admin GPO to be able to do the work, or if I'm just a regular user working on the box, I would they would push a regular GPO. I mean, how are you handling the GPOs on the fly like that?
Sure. Well, in the TechNet article, it talks about how it talks about this Active Directory administrative tier model. So there's a couple PowerShell scripts they provide, and one thing it does is create a couple levels of OUs. So you have like a tier 0, tier 1, tier 2. Tier 0 is like your domain admin. Tier 1 would be like your member servers admins and the boxes too, not just the users, I guess. And then tier 2 would be like your workstations and local admins for administering those. And when you deploy the GPOs, you have the idea is that accounts and systems in tier 0 are never used. You don't go down to tier 1 or tier 2. You only your accounts that are in tier 0 only are accessed on or from other machines or accounts in tier 0, and then same with tier 1 and tier 2. So that's kind of, so when you run that PowerShell script, it sets up all those different OUs, and then when you go to deploy this, you put your PAW users into the, whatever it is, tier 0 accounts OU. You put the PAW computer accounts into the tier 0, whatever I can't remember the name of it now, but for the machines, there's an OU for that. And so it kind of walks you through all that. I mean, and they did a really good job explaining and kind of walking you through running those PowerShell scripts and setting up those tiers for you, I guess.
So it almost sounds like a fancy sudo or something where you've got you're going to run a PowerShell script and it's going to take that host and move it to different tiers based on what you need to be done at the time.
No, it doesn't move them. I mean, you set up so like you'll have your domain admin is always going to be in tier 0.
Okay.
Your member server admin is always going to be in tier 1, and your workstation or local admins are always going to be in tier 2. Mm-hmm. But you never log on to a tier 2 PC with your domain admin creds. You never log on to a member server with domain admin. You only log into domain controllers with domain admin.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So like same thing with member server admin. You only log into member servers with your member server account. You never log into like a PC with a member server account because then you're leaving your credentials there.
Yeah. Okay, so you have a you can only access certain servers with certain accounts. So you've actually taken and split up the various permissions. So you're going to have 4 or 5 different accounts based on whatever tier is going on. So if you are if you're a domain admin and actually you're going to it's almost what is it? It's role based, right? So I mean, if you're a domain admin, you're going to have a domain account, a member account, a super user, or and then a regular user account.
And that gets a little out of hand pretty quickly when you're a small business. Like, you have a couple IT people, you have a lot of accounts.
Yeah, and I would imagine, depending on who's working at the organization you're working at, they may have a need for a higher level user account than just regular user, and so they all have 2 accounts on their own as well, right?
Oh yeah, sometimes, yeah. So, you have to put in the groundwork first too. Like you got to make sure users aren't running as a local admin first. I mean, that's kind of that's your first step. If you're not doing that, that's kind of the first thing you got to tackle. And a lot of this takes a lot of organization or a buy-in from upper management, or you're probably not going to get it done.
Well, okay, so you said you worked for a relatively small organization. What was the culture change like? Because obviously they weren't doing this when you got there. This must have been something you've been working on in the last 6 months to a year. So what was the culture change or the culture shift like for this? Was this a, hey, there's a compliance requirement for us to do, X, Y, and Z, and this will solve our problem? Or, hey guys, security wise, we just need to be doing this because this will make us more secure. How are you, you got buy-in from management, but how did it work with the rest of the employees?
Right. It actually wasn't that hard, but I'm pretty lucky that in the fact I have a lot of control in what we do for IT, and we don't have a big team, and there's not a lot of people that are kind of stuck in their ways that I had to really talk into this. And what I did first was I tested it out on myself. So I broke out my accounts into like 6 accounts and just worked that way for a few months and kind of worked out the bugs before I even showed anybody it. And then I went down the line showing different people. And at first they're kind of like, yeah, but why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Because they don't understand the risk. But if you can demo them interpreter shell and running Mimikatz and migrating to an admin account on a box. That's kind of that kind of opens people's eyes, especially sysadmins that aren't really into security. When you show them that, they're like, it kind of opens up their eyes.
Yeah, seeing is believing.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago on our Mimikatz a podcast where it's like, getting rid of the if you could get rid of local admin, that makes it a lot easier to protect against this kind of stuff, or not setting up your systems properly. So how hard was it to get rid of local admin on there? Did you give them the ability to do everything a local admin did without actually being local admin, or did you just say, hey, you know what? You're not going to have local admin privileges. If you want to install software, you're going to have to come through us. How did you handle that from an organizational point of view?
Well, it took a while to get that one done. Actually, that was probably one of the hardest parts of it. One of the things we had to do was invest in some kind of a software to deploy software quickly and easily. And what I ended up using is PDQ deploy. Worked pretty well for us. And it was just kind of slowly, when Windows 7 was finally up and running, and UAC, and they kind of got the bugs worked out of that after Vista and stuff. It works really well if you have it set up right. And the hard part though is you have some applications that don't play nice with UAC, and maybe they're EXEs or whatever, and so you cannot run them unless you are a local admin. And so putting pressure on vendors to fix that kind of stuff, that just kind of took time. But I think it's here now, at least for us, and it has been for a while. So I know it's not easy, and by no means easy, but it is possible to do that for sure.
When you did the rollout, was it by department, or did you just do it across the entire enterprise? Were you able to say, okay, this department needs access to only certain things, so we can give them only certain accounts? I mean, how did you roll this out? Because it seems like even with a small organization, you may have 10, 15 different roles. For a company with thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, this could get unwieldy pretty quickly, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, again, I kind of tested it on myself, and and then I rolled it out. I had like a handful of users, like whatever your roles are, so take a small subset of one or two of each role. Maybe anybody that does kind of uses different applications, you'd want to kind of have in your test group, and then kind of get them on board to just try this with you, and then take it away, see what breaks. And you want to be really nice to them, so if you're causing them any kind of that they're not able to do your job, you got to turn it off and let them, until you can figure out and let them do their job. You don't want to be, you want to be nice to them, especially if you're letting you be the guinea pig for you.
Sure.
So to do this, you don't have to take away admin privileges, right? You can still have admin on your guest or your PAW. You can still have admin on your regular machine, right? Your everyday machine. It's not going to affect your access on the PAW, right?
Right, but I still don't run that as local admin. I still run as a standard user, and if I have to install something or something, then I use the next level, the next account up.
Right, but it's not a requirement to get the same security,
no,
right?
Right, yeah, no. Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily have to.
Cool.
Okay, and you can also do this with VDI, obviously, right?
Yep. If you already have that set up in your environment, you could have an admin machine and a productivity machine. How you access that would be a question. That would probably depend on how you have, VDI set up. I don't know if it would be like a thin client, or I don't know how that would work, but you would want to make sure that was coming from a trusted source, like something that's really locked down, however you're accessing that privileged one.
Okay. So, it's good that you're actually eating your dog food on this. So what was some of the lessons learned that you got when you were deploying this?
Well, I guess some of the things are like, I didn't realize how awesome Hyper-V is on Windows 10. I can have my guest productivity machine running and not really even know that that's what I'm running with on my dual monitors, and the audio, video, everything works really well. Copying, pasting between host and VM, and the Hyper-V networking is really sweet too, because you can put your VMs easily into another VLAN. Between wired and wireless, it all just works really well. One of the lessons learned though is that, like I said, it can get pretty unwieldy. The number of accounts that you have to manage and keep track of. And I was talking about this with a buddy of mine, and we were just talking about how he would deploy it in his environment, and he said I wouldn't be able to talk people into that because our password policy is so strict. We can't even have like a dictionary word in our password. And I said, well, that's stupid if your minimum requirements is 9 characters, but you can't have a 25 character password that has a dictionary word in it. Like there have to be a change there, because you're not going to be able to remember 6 accounts that are just totally random without a single dictionary word in it.
Yeah. So you said that the pod deployment works well with network segmentation. Maybe you could help us understand how that works. I know you said with the you can have separate network segments depending on which device, but I mean, how does that work along with network segmentation of your business network?
Right. So let's say you have 10 locations, and you may have to go to any of them to fix whatever it is IT related. So you could set up an admin network at each location and a user network at each location. And one thing that we did recently is the user networks can no longer talk to any other user networks whatsoever. You can't ping it. You can't hit it at all. And from the admin networks, obviously you have to be able to talk through those. But I mean, we even did VLAN ACL. So even if you are on the same same local LAN network as another user that's on the user network, you can't communicate with it. And we just recently had a pen test, penetration test done, and it went really well because we put them on a user network, and all they could really see is some of the internal servers that they need to see, but they couldn't move laterally anywhere because they couldn't talk to anything else. But that just plays well because you have your user VM and you put that on the user network, and then you have your admin host and you put that on the admin network, and you want to have that user VM segmented to kind of protect your host too, I suppose, in case there was a way to break off onto the hypervisor.
Okay. So we were a couple of weeks ago when we were doing the Mimikatz thing, I mentioned the protected users group. Wouldn't the protected users group kind of solve a lot of the issues with regard to what users, what roles were in place. Could you automate the process of saying, okay, I want to change roles. I'm going to run this PowerShell script, and that's going to change my permissions so that I don't have to worry about any, now I'm a super user, or now I'm better than just a regular user. Could you use protected users group in that case?
So protected users group is awesome, and that actually pairs well with PAWs too, because what users group does is when you're a member of protected user group, it basically forces Kerberos authentication. So you're no longer using NTLM, and you're not leaving your credentials on that box anymore. And it also increases the encryption level of Kerberos, I believe. An issue with the protected users group is no more cached credentials. So if you try to put my laptop on the protected users group and I go home and I'm not on the domain, I can't log in unless I'm so I have like a always on VPN or something like that. So you got to kind of keep that in mind, that protected users group is great, especially for not leaving creds around. Now you're still going to leave your Kerberos ticket around, and when you're in the protected user group, it drops the lifetime of that ticket down to, I think, 2 hours instead of, I don't remember what the default is, but it's quite a bit more than that. So it's doing a lot of good things, but in my mind, it's not so much one or the other, but they both really go well together, I guess.
That's very cool. Okay. Mr. Betcher, do you have any other questions?
What does make LSA a protected process?
Make LSA process that Mimikatz dumps out of. I think it's LSAS.
Yeah, LSAS.
Oh, yeah.
You can make that a protected process by a registry edit. That's just kind of another cool thing that people should do. I think that can break things, though. I think so you'd have to test it, but it can also be reversed by a bad guy. And I believe you might have to reboot. I'm not totally sure. I think that might not be totally accurate, but it can be reversed by the bad guy. Just if they have admin rights, they can just undo the registry edit. And I'm not sure if you have to reboot or not, but it's just kind of another thing you can do to try to lock that down a little bit more.
So I have a question. So I'm going to go back up to one of your other points here. You mentioned configuring WSUS for your PAWs. Does that mean for each tier you have to have a WSUS server because you can't push patches to different tiers, or do you put your WSUS server in your tier 0 and everything kind of trickles down from that?
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. You could still have your WSUS server. You wouldn't have to have multiple ones. I suppose there could be an argument made for that, though, because if your WSUS server is compromised and it could somehow push something malicious down, that wouldn't be good. But
yeah.
Basically, your pod's going to have to talk to that server anyway to manage it. So you just want to make sure in that outline there, you want to make sure that your pod's getting patched somewhere. That's one way that's going to keep it hardened.
Yeah.
But you really want to limit anything you install on that. So
sure.
The less you install on there, the better. I don't even know if I would put like enterprise antivirus on it, because you see like Tavis or Mandy on Twitter always coming up with that semantic one not too long ago, where all you had to do is send somebody an email and it runs the kernel, so the engine just scanning the file pops your box. So I think you're almost better relying on Windows Defender. Windows Defender on Windows 10 is actually pretty tough to. It's just getting better and better. The only thing in my eyes that isn't great is the reporting of it. But if you have that hooked up to like a SIM or uh, things like that, in my opinion, is it's pretty good.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you mentioned Windows 10 Hyper-V, so I'm assuming you've deployed Windows 10 to all the environments or all your people. So you're running fairly recent versions of Windows. Could you use like the snapshotting abilities of using VMs and such, so that once somebody's done actually doing something on that host and they shut down the VM, it'll automatically revert back to an earlier snapshot that is a known good, so that you wouldn't have to worry about, okay, they're running on this box 5 minutes ago, they did something and picked up a virus. The minute they shut it off, it would revert back to a snapshot which wouldn't have that virus in the first place. Is that something that could be used to further secure the system?
Yeah, I suppose it would be. I think you really would have an advantage with that if you're running a VDI or something like that, where you could actually just do that on a regular basis. You'd have to have it really set up right so that you're not blowing away anything that the user's using.
Mm-hmm.
But every night you could just go back to a known good. I would think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, the only other negative I see about this is if you have, if you're a Mac shop or if you're a Windows or a Linux shop, then you're pretty much hamstrung by this, right? I mean, can't really use those in this environment, right? I mean, I guess you could use them as VMs, but I mean, does the tiered situation work for those environments or those OSs?
Not the way I have it set up, but I would think you could develop your own PAW that's Linux based. Whatever your Unix flavor is.
Mm-hmm.
You just would have to come up with the criteria of that on your own, and you can you can basically remove everything. I mean, Linux. If you got a Linux guru in the house, you can really take everything out of that distro that you want, and I would think that you could definitely do it. You just have to set up your criteria and how much what you're going to be using it for, and the risk you want to take by what you want to have installed on it, and you
Mm-hmm.
can do the same thing as with IP tables and stuff for allowing blocking everything inbound and not allowing browsing from it, and I'm sure you can configure all that with Unix or Linux, but it just take work probably to set that up.
Yeah, you could probably use something like SE Linux to help push policies to harden the system, or what AppArmor. There's GRSec. There's a ton of stuff out there that you could push out to harden your workstations on that.
Yeah.
How does
I don't think there's no reason why you couldn't do that with different. The concept would be the same.
Yeah. How would PAW work with alternative methods of authentication? Like if you wanted to use smart cards, or Windows 10 with the anniversary edition has that facial recognition thing. Do you just not allow those kinds of things and go with a straight password, or would a smart card still be available?
Well, actually, in that article, they talk about different phases of deploying this, and at first they talk about just deploying it for domain admins.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you kind of get acclimated it and stuff to it, you deploy it to all like member servers and all administrators.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that too is they recommend using smart cards as well. So I haven't got that far into it yet. I know there are some unique things with smart cards as far as leaving creds around. Like I think that it doesn't change your it's something to do with like the Kerberos ticket, or is it Intel? I don't remember if it's Kerberos or the hash that doesn't get changed unless you do some scripting magic to make it change
Mhm.
on a regular basis. So
Okay.
I guess I haven't researched that enough to know.
Well, that's okay. That was a fringe question anyway. I have not seen any company or organization using smart cards since I left government service back in 2006. So I know a lot of hospitals like to try to use them, but they end up staying logged in on a bunch of the servers anyway. So, you know, I would like to see those become more ubiquitous because I mean it's something you have instead of something you know. It's a different method of authentication. So, Mr. Betcher, do you have any other questions before we end the podcast for this week?
No, just a comment. I agree. Windows Defender has come a long way. I was reading an article the other day where it can deobfuscate, right? Malware, and then read the signature from that, and not just have to, read the obfuscated portion of it and think, "Wow, this seems okay." Right. So yeah, and other antivirus can take advantage of that because it is part of Windows. Windows Defender just has it by default now.
Very cool.
So
Yeah, just a note on that. Like I said, I'm not a red team guy, so I don't. I'm by no means an expert, but I was just trying to run invoke Mimikatz with PowerShell on Windows 10, and in the PowerShell window, it was giving me an error saying this script contains malicious whatever. So I was googling about it, and they said, "Well, just change the script. Change. It's as simple as changing the Mimikatz in the script to something else." And I tried that and couldn't get that to work. Now I'm sure there's a way around it, but I mean they're really trying to, and I think they're doing a really good job, really giving us tools to combat these things. And you got to give a lot of props to some of the guys out there that are helping them do that. Like ObscureSec and passing the hash, and I mean they put a lot of pressure on Microsoft to give us tools to mitigate this stuff. So.
yeah, and you can't just change the signature of Mimikatz either. That doesn't work. It looks in some of the internal sections of the binaries to figure out what it is. So, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. William, I'm sorry, Bill. I was going to say, I'm sorry your talk was rejected, and I'm glad you were able to come on the show. But, congratulations on having your talk accepted at DerbyCon. We're going to see you at DerbyCon. We're going to sit down and have a beverage or one or two and introduce ourselves. Mr. Betcher, apparently you met Mr. Betcher at DerbyCon last year, he thinks. Did he look familiar to you before we turned the webcams off?
Yeah, he did. I think I talked to him. I talked to you there, and Michael Goff by the after one of you guys' talks, we were talking about logging.
Near the bar, huh? Near the couch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Nice.
Small world. Very nice. Okay. Very cool. So, I mean, with that in mind, you're at DerbyCon. How would people get a hold of you to maybe? We didn't go through everything in your talk because we wanted to keep some surprises. I hope, and I'm sure that this is just you're now working hard on the slides for the talk. So I'm sure there's going to be other things in the talk. So it would definitely behoove people if they're wanting a different way of locking down the systems to look into this. So how would they get a hold of you if they wanted to maybe add more input, or if they wanted to go, hey, ask some more questions? How would they do so?
I'd love to get some feedback from any positive or negative feedback from people before my talk. It's just going to help me make it better, I think. So it's kind of nice talking this over with you guys before I really get into the details. And I'm actually getting kind of nervous because I don't feel like I have a whole lot of time to get that done. But Twitter, if you just want to reach out to me on Twitter, it's at Blue Teamer.
At Blue Teamer, okay.
Yep.
All right. Are you on LinkedIn or anywhere else that you'd like to mention? Tumblr? You have a do you have a Tinder? No, wait, you don't have a Tinder. No.
No LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm one of those paranoid people.
Right on. And you said you're in South Dakota, so if there's any InfoSec people in South Dakota, they could reach out to a South Dakotan there, and maybe you guys can get together and do a meetup or something. That might be fun.
That's right, DakotaCon.
DakotaCon. When's that? Are you speaking at that?
That's in it's in the spring. I'm not sure if it's May or April.
Okay.
It's actually getting pretty good.
Very nice. Okay. All right. So, Mr. Betcher, same question. How would people get a hold of you if they wanted to discuss, what you're doing? Because you guys are going to be. You're going to be speaking at DerbyCon, but on LogMD, right? Or is that just Mr. Goff?
That's just Mr. Goff. He's
Great.
He got accepted for a talk, so
okay,
we'll see how that goes.
Very cool.
Yep, he's got to get that all prepared now. It's a new thing. So
all right.
So we're talking about something he hasn't talked about before. So
ooh, uncharted waters.
Yep.
Okay, well, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to?
I'm on Twitter. Just hit me up there at Betcherpwned, BOETTCHERPWNED.
Very nice. Okay. The BreakSec podcast, you can follow the official one at BreakSec, BRAKESEC. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. We're pretty much everywhere on the internet. We have a SoundCloud page where we post our podcasts. We have a Facebook page, has about 13,000 people. I don't know. I don't have 13,000 downloads for podcasts except in a month. So some of those people are probably following us for, just be bandwagon fans. We're on Player FM. We're on Stitcher. If you're a fan of TuneIn Radio Network, we're on there. Of course, we're on iTunes, and we have a YouTube channel where you can listen to us on YouTube if you don't want to use a RSS feed or RSS reader. We have a Patreon. I appreciate all the people that have been given money to support us on Patreon. Some of you folks from the very beginning, like Miss Sunny and some guy named Leroy Jenkins. I don't know who that guy is. That's Mr. Betcher, by the way. And all those people, they find value in what we put out here every week. And, we've done a podcast every week for over 2.5 years, which has got to be some kind of record. So if you find any kind of value in this, you can support us for as little as $1. We've had a couple people support us at $20 recently, and they're being entered into our drawing, which by the time this podcast comes out, we're actually drawing it tomorrow. Today's the 19th. We're going to draw it on the 20th. So congratulations to whoever won. I'm sure you're excited about going to DerbyCon. And hopefully next year we'll do some of the same stuff. We'll do another CTF and we'll do another drawing and a raffle. But I think we raised almost $1,000 for Hackers for Charity. So that's pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we did almost $1,000 worth of business for them. We did like 650 last year. I think we did almost 1,000 this year. So, if
we didn't do anything. It was all you guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, folks who are wanting to get involved with DerbyCon and get a entry to win, they just had to give every $50 they gave to Hackers for Charity was an entry to win. So we had one guy give like $350, and I was like, I told the guy, I was like, his name's Trevor. I was like, it's only $175, and there are tickets floating out there. You could have just done that. He's like, no, it's cool. I give to them on a regular basis anyway. I was like, all right, whatever. So he has the overwhelming odds right now. Trevor does, but I'm going to take a video and we're going to randomize the list, and we're going to pull out a random number, and even guy with one entry can still win the whole shebang. So we're going to be drawing that on the 20th of August. So congratulations to whoever won. So, Bill, thank you for coming on the show. I'm glad it turned out for the best for you. I guess I should mention, if you've got a rejected talk that was rejected at one of the major cons, or you just maybe want to test it out at a podcast before you send it out, hit us up, bds.podcast@gmail.com. All right. So that was it for this week's podcast. thank you, Mr. Betcher, for recording. This podcast almost never didn't happen, so appreciate you stepping up there and doing that.
It's our DR plan.
Yeah, we definitely implemented the DR plan today, boy. Oh my God. All right. So that was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Have a great week and we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye. Do you know how B-Sides got started, Brian?
Yeah, B-Sides was like all the rejected talks from Black Hat and DEF CON, right?
Yeah.
And now there's a rejected con. I saw that after I put the hashtag rejected talks up. Some guy was like, hey, yeah, we also take rejected talks too. I was like, oh, great. There's no official, there's no original idea out there. But, there are still people who were rejected from the rejected cons talk, or from B-Sides. So, there are still talks that don't make the grade. And talks like Bill were on the cusp, or you've got people who've never talked before and they're a little, weirded out about doing so. So, the whole idea of the rejected talks was, the hashtag was to, 2,000 people are going to see this podcast or hear this podcast. That's more than what you're going to get at a stable talk at DerbyCon.
Yeah. For sure.
Even if they just go to DerbyCon and watch the video later, you're going to get maybe 500-600 people watching the whole thing. This has 2,000 people averaging listening to this podcast, and that's in perpetuity. We still have podcasts that are year and a half, 2 years old that have over 4,000 downloads. So and this is a nice way of getting people's name out there. You're like, hey, not only did I talk at B-Sides, I also was on the Breaking Down Security podcast. So you can add that to your resume. You can add that to your LinkedIn profile. You can use that as I don't want to say a brag, part of your brag sheet, but you're giving back to the industry in some meaningful way.